The megastructure arrived uninvited, a jagged crown of teeth and shadow chewing through the outer planets. It did not announce itself. It did not negotiate. By the time the Coalition's probes registered its approach, 3 colonies had already vanished, swallowed whole, their comms dissolving into static hymns of atoms being unmade. Scientists called it vespertine, a poetic lie to soften the horror of its anatomy, a biomechanical leviathan, its surface seething with defensive membranes that dissolved warships into slurry. But the worst of its secrets lay within. First contact teams sent to Parley returned hollow. Not dead, not alive, husks stripped of memory, their skulls buzzing with alien radio static. Autopsies revealed neural pathways scorched clean, as though something had burned through their minds to erase itself. The Coalition's answer was the 9th Orbital Division, the Drop Devils, exosuited paratroopers who fell from the stars like wrathful gods. Their orders were simple: breach, burn, salt the earth. They did not know the structure was not a warship. They did not know its corridors bled when cut, that its walls whispered in the voices of the dead, that its architects had not built it to invade, but to contain. And they certainly did not know what happened to those who survived the drop. The first teams reported anomalies, gravity inversions, equipment birthing strange code, hallucinations of loved ones begging for mercy. Then the EMPs came, suits failed, squads vanished. Command buried the reports, stitching together a new strategy: send faster, send smarter, send quiet. But the megastructure was always listening. It hungered. And it had been waiting for something far older than humanity to wake up. Chapter 1. The dropship shuddered as it breached the thermosphere, its hull groaning under the strain of artificial gravity. Through the viewport, Sergeant Jorin watched the alien megastructure bloom beneath him like a tumorous flower, its petals glistening with bioluminescent mucus. His exosuit's joints creaked as he tightened his harness, the smell of recycled oxygen and burnt wiring clotting his throat. The squad's helmets flickered with pre-drop diagnostics, green across the board, save for the new transfer. Nyssa Corin, intelligence liaison, clean-cut, cobalt-eyed, her gaze sharp enough to flay a man's secrets. She sat apart from the others, fingers tapping a silent code against her thigh rig. Jorin distrusted anyone who did not sweat before a drop. The launch bay depressurized with a serpentine hiss. One by one, the drop devils plummeted into the void, their exosuits igniting into meteors as they pierced the atmosphere. Jorin waited until last, old habit, born from a failed mission where he had not. The memory clawed at him, screaming comms, a lieutenant's skull fracturing like porcelain mid-descent. He exhaled, stepped into the blackness, and let the planet's pull claim him. Fire enveloped his visor. The suit's AI chanted altitude markers, but the numbers blurred as the megastructure's surface yawned closer, a geography of throbbing membranes and calcified spires. His squad's signals clustered on the tactical display, all except Nyssa's. Her beacon blinked erratically, veering off course. He opened a channel. "Corin, correct your trajectory. You are drifting into the eastern sinus." Static. Then her voice, clipped and cold, negative, proceeding to secondary ingress. His jaw tightened. Command had not briefed a secondary ingress. The suit's alarms shrieked. The megastructure's defenses awoke. A ripple of purple light surged upward, EMP teeth gnashing through his systems. His stabilizers died first, then the oxygen recycler. The world spun, his visor cracking as he collided with a spire. He glimpsed Nyssa's suit spiraling nearby, her thrusters dead. Instinct overrode protocol. He detonated his reserve chute, the cables snagging her ankle before she vanished into a pulsing ventral duct. The impact nearly dislocated his shoulder. Together, they crashed into a chamber deep within the structure's bowels. Jorin's visor was half shattered, the air reeking of ammonia and something sweetly organic. He pried himself from the spongeous floor, his exosuit's joints grinding against alien biofilm. Nyssa knelt nearby, her gloved hands skimming glyphs etched into the walls, a language of spirals and jagged slashes. "This is not a nest," she murmured, more to herself than him. "It is a hive, a living circuit." He did not care for the awe in her voice. "We need to regroup. Your beacon malfunction drew the AMP." She stood unholstering a seismic charge from her pack. "There is no time. This sector's core is 2 levels down. Set the charge here, and the chain reaction will cripple the structure." He blocked her path, his shadow swallowing her slender frame. "You are not here to observe. Command gave you a demolition order." Her eyes narrowed. "And you are here to die for a lie." The chamber quaked, a membranous ceiling split, disgorging a rain of gelatinous larvae. Nyssa dodged, but Jorin seized her arm, yanking her into a lateral duct as the larvae burst against the floor, their acid eating through the biofilm. They crawled in silence, the duct's walls contracting rhythmically around them, until they emerged into a vaulted gallery. Here the air tasted of rust. Alien corpses littered the floor, their exoskeletons split open, not by weapons but from within. Jorin knelt beside a carcass, his glove prodding a jagged exit wound. These were not killed, they were hatched. Nyssa traced a glyph above the corpse, her voice unsteady. "This symbol repeats across the chambers. It is not a warning, it is a plea." A low, resonant hum filled the gallery. The corpses began to vibrate, their hollowed abdomens birthing swarms of metallic mites. Nyssa's hand brushed Jorin's armored wrist, a fleeting contact, charged with unspoken truce. Together they ran. Chapter 2. The chamber drew breath. Its walls, veined with luminescent capillaries, pulsed in time with a rhythm deeper than Jorin's own heartbeat. He pressed his back against the spongious tissue, the residue of their flight from the mite swarm still crackling in his joints. Nyssa crouched beside him, her fingers splayed over a glyph etched into the floor, a spiral fractured by a vertical slash. Her lips moved soundlessly, translating symbols into strategy. Jorin did not ask what she saw. He did not wish to know how deeply command had buried the truth. They moved through ducts that coiled like intestines, their exosuits smeared with biofilm that glowed faintly in the dark. Jorin's visor was a spiderweb of cracks, each fracture distorting the world into jagged slices. He focused on the tactical display, its flickering holography mapping the labyrinth ahead. Nyssa's beacon merged with his, a single blip in the megastructure's gullet. She had not spoken since the gallery, but her silence was a language he understood, sharp, deliberate, heavy with unshared calculations. The duct opened into a cavernous space where gravity died. Jorin's boots magnetized to a catwalk suspended above a chasm, the air thick with drifting spores that shimmered like ash. Below, a reactor core throbbed, its surface a mosaic of hexagonal cells secreting viscous fluid. Nyssa anchored herself to a railing, her gaze tracking the patterns of light across the core. "This is a power nexus," she said, her voice stripped of its usual frost. "If we destabilize it, the entire sector could collapse." Jorin grunted, scanning for threats. The words "could" and "if" were luxuries for officers in orbit, not for those drowning in the stench of alien viscera. He gestured to a cluster of conduits overhead, their sinewy forms writhing as though alive. "Use those to cross. The catwalk will not hold." She hesitated, her gloved hand hovering over the seismic charge strapped to her thigh. For a moment, he thought she might argue. Instead, she unclipped a grapple line and fired it into the conduit's flesh. The line went taut, and she swung into the void, her body a blade cutting through the spores. Jorin followed, his muscles burning as the conduit shuddered under his weight. Halfway across, the structure convulsed. A spasm tore the conduit free, and he fell. The drop was silent, endless. Then his harness jerked, the grapple line snapping taut. Nyssa clung to the railing above, her arm trembling as she anchored his weight. "Climb," she hissed, the word a frayed wire. He did, hand over hand, the line slicing through his gloves. When he reached her, their visors nearly touched. Her breath fogged the glass, her eyes dilated in the half-light. No words, only the unsteady acknowledgement that she had not let him fall. They descended into the reactor's heart, where gravity returned in erratic bursts. The floor was a lattice of tendrils that recoiled at their touch, each step a negotiation with the structure's anger. Nyssa paused beside a cell ruptured open, its fluid pooling around a humanoid shape, an alien, its carapace peeled back to reveal a hollow chest. Jorin knelt, his glove brushing the wound. This was not an attack, it was an autopsy. Nyssa's breath hitched. She pointed to glyphs spiraling up the wall, their edges charred. They were studying it, trying to understand what they had trapped here. A low hum vibrated through the chamber. The spores ignited into emerald flames, revealing 3 figures silhouetted on a distant platform. Jorin's pulse spiked. Drop devils, or what remained of them. Their exosuits were fused with biomechanical growths, helmets cracked to expose faces mottled by black veins. One turned, its eyes twin voids. The Hollowing's voice slithered through Jorin's comms, a chorus of his dead lieutenant's screams. "You are already ours." Nyssa's hand found his, a fleeting pressure. They ran. The wardens came first, spidery drones with talons of plasma, hatched from the reactor's cells. Jorin fired, his rounds tearing through chitinous hides, but the things did not die. They reassembled, limbs clicking into place with insectal precision. Nyssa ducked beneath a talon's swing, priming a sonic grenade. The core, target the core. He did not question, he never questioned instinct. They split, her drawing the wardens into a cluster while he scaled a pulsating column, his boots slipping on secretions. The grenade's detonation sheared the drones into fragments. Jorin leapt, driving his combat knife into the reactor's central node. The blade sank deep, and the world screamed. The backlash hurled him against a wall, his visor shattered, oxygen hissing through the breach. Nyssa was at his side before he hit the floor, her hands sealing the rupture with emergency gel. Her face was inches from his, pale and streaked with biofluid. "Do not die here," she said, the order undercut by a tremor. "I will not carry your corpse." He laughed, the sound raw. "Would not ask you to." They retreated into a service shaft, the reactor's death throes shaking the walls. Nyssa's hands trembled as she recalibrated her charge. Jorin watched her, the way her brow furrowed, not in fear, but in fury at her own miscalculations. He thought of the dead lieutenant, of the weight of unspoken apologies. "Your brother," he said, "was he a good soldier?" Her fingers stilled. "He was a fool. He believed in duty." "And you?" She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. "I believe in endings." The shaft spilled them into a vertical chamber, its walls ribbed with fossilized spines. At its base lay a pit filled with liquid shadow, its surface rippling as though stirred by unseen currents. Nyssa activated her scanner, the readout casting her face in sickly blue. "The charge needs to be planted here. The instability will propagate upward, crippling the prison's containment field." Jorin peered into the pit. Shapes moved beneath the surface, humanoid, alien, their forms melting into one another. The Hollowing's whispers returned, softer now, intimate. "We see your regrets, Sergeant. We see the one you failed." He stepped back. "This is not a prison. It's a tomb, and we are about to wake what's inside." Nyssa's jaw tightened. She gripped the charge, her knuckles bleaching. "Command did not brief me on collateral." "Command never does." A noise above, scuttling, chittering. The infected devils descended the chamber walls, their movements a grotesque parody of human grace. Jorin pushed Nyssa behind him, his rifle raised. "Set the charge. I will hold them." She did not move. "If we trigger this, the Hollowing escapes. Billions could die." "Your orders are wrong." The admission cracked her voice. The glyphs, they were not warnings. They were obituaries. The aliens built this place to contain it, and now we are here to finish their mistake. The infected lunged. Jorin fired, rounds punching through necrotic flesh. One tackled him, its jaws snapping at his throat. He gagged on the stench of decay, his fingers scrambling for the knife. Nyssa's boot crushed the thing's skull, her breath ragged. We need to go, now. They climbed, the infected swarming beneath them. The shaft narrowed, the spines tearing at their suits. Jorin's oxygen alarm blared, 30% dropping. Nyssa's hand clamped around his wrist, hauling him onto a ledge. Her visor reflected his face, bloodied and desperate. Listen to me. The charge can be recalibrated. If we overload the reactor's secondary systems, we might seal the hollowing without a chain reaction. Well, might. Her lips thinned, 60% probability. He stared at her, at the woman who had lied, who had gambled lives, who had let him see her doubt. Do it. The descent into the reactor's corpse was a blur of pain and phosphorescent bile. Nyssa worked with frenzied precision, her tools splicing alien circuitry with human explosives. Jorin stood guard, his body a barricade against the nightmare at their heels. When the charge ignited, the explosion was silent, a flash of gold light that seared the hollowing's tendrils from the walls. The structure shuddered, its death rattled a sigh of relief. In the aftermath, they huddled in a cavity of scarred tissue, their oxygen reserves in single digits. Nyssa's head slumped against his shoulder, her hair matted with biofluid. You should have left me in the duct, she muttered. He studied the cracks in his visor, the way they refracted her exhaustion into something almost human. Would you have? She did not answer. She did not need to. Above them, the megastructure began to die. Its walls peeled back, revealing a sliver of star-strewn sky. Jorin thought of the drop devils still lost in the labyrinth, of the hollowing's promises, of Nyssa's brother's face in the static of a dead comms channel. He thought, too, of the way her hand had felt in his, not a plea, not a promise, but a pact. They rose. Chapter 3. The silence did not last. The megastructure's death rattle began as a low, resonant hum, a sound that vibrated in the marrow before it reached the ears. Jorin Vask pressed a palm to the chamber wall, the biomechanical flesh beneath his glove now cold and brittle, its luminescence dimmed to a sickly gray. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling, weeping streams of black fluid that pooled around their boots. Nyssa Corin stood a pace ahead, her posture rigid as she scanned the crumbling vault with a soldier's discipline, but her breath fogged the visor in uneven hitches. She had not slept. Neither had he. Sleep was a luxury for those unacquainted with the scent of their own blood mingling with alien rot. They climbed. The shaft they navigated was a graveyard of half-formed things, chitinous ribs jutting from the walls, clusters of eyes embedded in the resinous floor, their pupils dilated in perpetual horror. Jorin's exosuit whined with every step, its joints clogged with biofilm. He did not trust it to hold. He did not trust anything but the weight of the seismic charge strapped to Nyssa's back, its timer blinking a steady, accusatory green. 60 minutes, 59, 58. The numbers carved themselves into his skull. A tremor split the air. The shaft convulsed, hurling them against a nest of calcified tendrils. Nyssa's elbow struck a protruding spine, her gasp sharp and stifled. Jorin caught her wrist before she slid into the abyss below, his gloves slipping on the fluid-slicked tendrils. For a heartbeat, they hung suspended, her weight a pendulum over the void. Her eyes locked onto his, not in fear, but in a fury that mirrored his own, a refusal to let the structure claim another corpse. He hauled her up, their foreheads nearly touching, the air between them charged with the static of unspoken acknowledgments. The central spire, she said, her voice stripped of its former frost. That is where we seal it. He did not ask how she knew. The hollowing's whispers had grown louder, their tendrils threading through his thoughts like smoke. You are ours, it murmured, its voice a collage of the dead, his lieutenant's final curse, Nyssa's brother's laughter, the choked pleas of the infected. Jorin tightened his grip on his rifle. The weapon felt useless here, a child's toy against the dark. They emerged into a cavern so vast its edges dissolved into shadow. Ribbons of bioluminescent mist curled through the air, coalescing into shapes that might have been human, might have been alien. The central spire loomed ahead, a jagged obsidian column riddled with pulsing sacs. Jorin's tactical display fizzed, its holography disintegrating into static. Useless. He relied instead on the ache in his muscles, the taste of copper on his tongue, primitive, honest things. Nyssa moved first, her strides measured, her gaze fixed on the spire. The floor here was a lattice of fused bone and wire, each step eliciting a wet crunch. Jorin lingered, his boot nudging a humanoid shape half absorbed into the lattice, a drop devil, their exosuit melted into the structure's flesh, their face a rictus of terror. A dog tag glinted in the corpse's clenched fist. Jorin did not need to read the name. He had carried enough tags home. The first thrall struck without sound. It dropped from the ceiling, a tangle of sinew and corroded armor, its movements a spastic mockery of life. Jorin fired, the rounds tearing through its chest, but the thing did not slow. Talons of bone raked his visor, the impact whiting out his vision. He stumbled back, his knife finding purchase in the thrall's throat. Black ichor sprayed, burning through his glove. The thing hissed, its voice a distorted echo of Corporal Wren's drawl. Should have died with the rest, Sarge. Nyssa's blade severed its spine. She yanked him upright, her breath ragged. Do not look at their faces. More thralls emerged from the mist, former squadmates, their bodies warped by the Hollowing's will. Jorin's finger hesitated on the trigger. Private Vel's grin now stretched across a jaw unhinged. Lieutenant Cad's eyes hollowed into pits. Nyssa's boot cracked a thrall's knee, her movements clinical, detached. They are not yours anymore, she snapped. Kill them. Well, he did. The fight blurred into a montage of gore and grief. They carved a path to the spire, their progress marked by the thrall's disintegrating remains. Jorin's oxygen alarm screamed 15%. Nyssa's charge timer blinked 37 minutes. The spire's base was a tangle of roots, each thicker than a man, throbbing with the Hollowing's corrupted pulse. Nyssa knelt, her tools already dissecting the root system. I need 10 minutes. You have 5. She did not glance up, then make it 10. The thralls regrouped, their numbers swelling. Jorin fought with the desperation of a man already dead, his knife a metronome of violence. A talon speared his thigh. He ripped it free, the pain a distant throb. Another thrall lunged, its face a melted portrait of Sergeant Hask, the man who had trained him, who had died saving a recruit. Jorin's bullet took it between the eyes. Hask's voice, or the Hollowing's, chuckled in the static. You never could protect them. Nyssa's shout cut through the noise. Now. He staggered to her side. The roots were splayed open, revealing a cavity of writhing, electric blue filaments. The seismic charge slotted into the flesh with a wet click. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the detonator. This will not just seal it. It will erase everything, the structure, the thralls, us. Jorin studied her face. The frost had thawed, revealing fissures of doubt, of guilt. He thought of the dog tag in his pocket, of the way Nyssa's hands had steadied when she recalibrated the charge. Redemption was not a second chance. It was the choice to burn brighter than your regrets. Undo it. Her finger descended. Nothing happened. The charge hissed, sparks dancing across its casing. A malfunction, a joke. The Hollowing's laughter shook the chamber, the roots convulsing, the spire cracking open to reveal a maw of infinite black. Nyssa cursed, her tools probing the charge's guts. The core is resistant. It needs a catalyst, a bioelectric pulse. Jorin stared at the fissure in the spire. The Hollowing's eye stared back, a pupil-less void that promised oblivion. He understood. They both did. No, Nyssa's voice was a blade. There is another way. There is not. He unclipped his damaged exosuit, the armor clattering to the floor. His undersuit was soaked in blood and sweat, the fabric clinging to old scars. The pulse needs a conduit, something human, or mostly human. She seized his arm. You do not get to die heroically. Not here, not after all this. He pried her fingers loose, his touch gentler than he intended. It is not heroism, it is a trade. Her laugh was brittle. What could you possibly owe this place? A life, he nodded to the thralls shambling closer. Maybe more. The Hollowing's voice swelled, a tsunami of despair. Yes, come, let us remember you. Jorin stepped into the fissure. Darkness swallowed him. The Hollowing was not a thing of flesh or machine. It was absence, a hunger that had gnawed through galaxies, through time. It peeled him open, not his body, but the man beneath. His failures unfolded like origami, the lieutenant's skull shattering, Nyssa's brother's dog tag burning in his palm, the recruits he had ordered to their deaths, each memory a tooth in the Hollowing's maw. But then a sound, a voice, clear and unyielding. Get up, Sergeant. Nyssa. Her hand breached the void, gloved fingers gripping his. She stood in the fissure, her exosuit scorched, her face a mask of defiance. The charge's timer blinked 0 at her hip. You do not die alone, she said, ever. The detonation was not fire or fury. It was light, pure, annihilating light. It poured from the charge, from their linked hands, from the cracks in their armor. The Hollowing screamed. The spire shattered. The thralls dissolved. Jorin woke to stars. The megastructure's remains drifted around them, jagged shards glinting in the cold radiance of a distant sun. Nyssa floated beside him, her helmet gone, her hair a dark nebula in the 0G void. Her hand was still entwined with his, alive, somehow alive. A supply pod's thrusters flared in the distance, its hatch yawning open. Command's retrieval signal blared in their comms, a sterile voice demanding debrief. Nyssa's thumb hovered over her data pad, its screen filled with mission logs, demolition orders, lies. She deleted them all, her face serene in the starlight. The pod swallowed them. Medics pried them apart, injected stimulants, murmured empty praises. Jorin's wounds were catalogued, bandaged, forgotten. Nyssa sat across the bay, her gaze fixed on the viewport as the megastructure's corpse receded. Alien shapes flitted through the debris, refugees finally free. When the medics left, she crossed to his cot. Her hand found his, the touch unsteady, unscripted. No words, none were needed. Outside, the stars burned indifferent and eternal. Inside, they let the silence say enough.